Hey guys, you clicked on this because you wanted to know what S3X was really like for Chinese emperors. Let me tell you, it wasn't romantic, it wasn't free, and it definitely wasn't safe. In fact, it was one of the most bureaucratic, dangerous, and metaphysical duties in the empire. Tonight, you're not just hearing about it. You are the emperor, and before your night begins, a cold silver tray is brought in filled with chilled wooden name tags. Each one holds a woman's name. You don't choose her. The palace chooses for you based on astrology, politics, and fertility charts. She won't walk to your chamber. She'll be carried wrapped in silk like a sacred parcel, inspected, powdered, prepared like a document, and you're not seeking pleasure. You're expected to maintain cosmic harmony. If you stay until the end of tonight's story, there's a part no one else was supposed to hear. A quiet reward just for those who breathe slowly and listen closely. So if that sounds like your kind of history, feel free to like or subscribe, no pressure. Now, dim the lights. Let the night begin. You don't get to choose her. That's the first lesson, not even as the emperor. Not even with 3,000 women behind red lacquered doors, waiting to be noticed. In the Forbidden City, desire is never a decision, it's a rotation. Each night begins with the tray, a silver basin, chilled with ice, carried into your chamber by 2 eunuchs dressed in identical robes. Inside are dozens of small wooden tags, each carved with a single woman's name: Lady Zhao, Lady Qin. Lady may names you recognize only sometimes. Each tag is a life, a waiting body. They call them you pay. You don't touch them. The eunuchs do. They pull a tag from the basin like it's a raffle, only it isn't random. The order is determined earlier in the day based on astrological charts, internal politics, fertility timing, and which family needs favor right now. Sometimes it's subtle. Other times you can see the scheme plain as day. The name is read aloud. You nod, and that's it. Tonight's woman is chosen, not by passion, by process. She's already being prepared. Somewhere, down the corridor, she's bathing in a tub of rice water and chrysanthemum petals. Her hair is being combed back tightly, her skin scrubbed, inspected, powdered. A physician checks her pulse, her temperature, her body ensuring she's not ill, not injured, not menstruating. A single blemish could cancel the night. And the most important part, her feet cannot touch the ground. Once her name is called, she becomes a vessel. From the moment she's dressed, she is literally carried by eunuchs. One at her shoulders, one at her ankles. She's not allowed to walk, because if she walks, she might pick up dust, or bad spirits, or ideas. You think that sounds strange, until you watch it. She arrives wrapped in soft silk, folded like a scroll, arms crossed, her eyes lowered, body limp. Not unconscious, just trained. She's not moving by choice. She's not meant to. She is delivered like a sacrificial offering, and once she arrives at the edge of your bed, the eunuchs bow, then leave, but not far. They wait just beyond the curtain, listening, logging. This is not seduction. This is inventory. Her arrival is recorded, time-stamped, the scent she wears, the temperature of her skin, her breath rate entered into a log that will be copied, archived, and eventually cross-referenced by someone you will never meet. You lie beside her. She doesn't speak. She's not supposed to. Her job is to stay still, to appear calm. Her breathing is practiced, shallow, quiet, controlled. Any tremor might be interpreted as stress, or manipulation, or political ambition. Even a smile is risky. You wonder what she's thinking, but you don't ask, because you know what happens next. If intimacy occurs, it will be noted. If climax is achieved, that too. Not for scandal, for governance. Because the woman in your bed isn't just a person. She's a potential mother of an heir, a potential shift in noble favor, a potential revision to the tax code, should her family's lands come into play. A single night with her might influence succession, land distribution, or the marriage prospects of her sister. And if nothing happens, she goes back, the same way she came, carried, silent. Her robe will be burned, the bedding replaced, shall be examined one more time for scratches, bruises, signs of sorcery, shall be questioned, Shall return to her chamber. Maybe shall be summoned again. Maybe not. Some women wait years between visits. Some never return. You've been told that many of them never speak of their night, not because they're forbidden, but because there's nothing to say. No candles, no whispers, no moment, just a tray, a name, a bed, a breath, and then nothing. Later that week, you'll hear that her uncle's position at the Ministry of Roads has been renewed. You'll nod. You won't mention her name. You may not even remember it. Because in the Forbidden City, the Emperor does not fall in love. He rotates. And somewhere, back in the Silver Basin, another name is cooling beneath crushed ice. The sun hasn't fully risen when your physician appears, robes rustling, brush in hand, ready to log the residue of last night. He doesn't ask how you feel. He checks your pulse, counts your breaths, peers into your eyes. He's not measuring health. He's measuring harmony. Your body, in this world, is not private property. It belongs to heaven and earth, and its rhythm its arousal, its restraint, its a missionar linked to the fate of the empire. You've been told this since you were a boy. When you climax, the harvest suffers. When you abstain too long, ministers fall sick. Too much yang energy expelled in the wrong direction, and the weather turns. Too little, and your generals lose morale. You're not making love. You're doing a job, and it's exhausting. By the second hour of the morning, you've been briefed on the Taoist calendar. Today's an auspicious day for internal balance. That means you're scheduled for a union again tonight. Not with the same woman. Of course. That would be indulgent. Attachment invites chaos. You nod without speaking. The eunuchs understand. They've already prepared the charts. They're looking for a concubine born under the element of water to cool your fiery signs. Shall be from a branch of the harem you haven't visited in months. Not for variety, for metaphysical alignment. You remember being younger, thinking this might be fun. You thought of emperors as men who took what they wanted. Power, gold, women. But real power has no scent, no appetite. It doesn't touch. It selects. You aren't allowed to choose based on want. In fact, expressing desire is a liability. You remember the story of an earlier emperor, perhaps it was Emperor Wu, who favoured one concubine too much. Visited her 3 nights in a row. Within a week, his court was whispering about weakness. The rice shipments from the south slowed mysteriously. A general defected in the west. Coincidence? No one thinks so. The palace interprets everything. Desire is dangerous because it signals emotion, and emotion is disorder, so you perform detachment like a dance. Your hands move, but not too often. Your gaze lingers, but never long. And always. The eunuchs are watching not for scandal, but for imbalance. If your cheeks are flushed in the morning, you're assigned herbal tonics. If you seem sluggish, a stricter Taoist master is summoned. They recalibrate your sexual frequency like they're tuning a clock. And the worst part, it works. At least, that's what they say. The astrologers report improved omens. The court healers cite steady pulse rates. Even the weather seems to bend in your favour, as if nature itself is watching your bed. You begin to believe it, not because it's logical, but because it's consistent. The rituals, the cycles, the incense and incantations, they give shape to a world that's too large to understand. They give meaning to your isolation. You aren't loved, you're obeyed, and so you endure. At night, the chamber is once again prepared. This time the lighting is softer, as today is a yin-heavy day. The lamps burn low. The concubine arrives late, almost midnight, to match the lunar alignment. She's younger than you expected, barely 20. Her movements are trained, not seductive, not shy, just deliberate. She bows once, then waits for the ritual cue. You nod, and the room begins its cycle. The guards outside seal the chamber. A bell rings to mark the hour. The eunuchs withdraw into shadow, but remain within earshot, just in case the rhythm of your breathing needs to be logged. The concubine lights a small brazier filled with herbs said to purify the air and relax the spirit. You try not to cough. The smoke smells like sage and something slightly metallic. She removes her robe, layer by layer, not like a lover, but like a monk before entering water. There's nothing playful in the moment, only instruction, and you, the Son of Heaven, follow along. You begin slowly. The Taoist texts recommend matching your breath to hers. 3 counts in, 2 counts hold, 3 counts release. The energy must move through the meridians. Every thrust must serve circulation, not indulgence, no climax, just flow. The concubine guides the rhythm. She's been trained to signal with the tilt of her hips, the tightening of her thighs, even the way she blinks. This is not sex. This is silent alchemy. At one point, you feel something spark pleasure, instinct, want, but it's quickly extinguished by your own discipline. You squeeze your lower abdomen. As instructed, you redirect the warmth upward toward your chest. That's what the manual says. Let the fire rise to the heart, but never spill. Your mind wanders to the maps of distant provinces, to the dispute with the coastal merchants, to the odd dream you had last night, something about a fish swimming backward. The ritual ends with no sound, no panting, no soft laughter, just stillness. The concubine rests briefly beside you, hands folded, eyes closed, not asleep, just silent. She'll be taken away before dawn, of course. Her sweat analysed, her pulse recorded. Your own essence. If you spilled, any will be logged in the court registry. If not, it will be marked as a successful internal cultivation. You lie in the dark, staring at the carved dragon above your canopy bed. Your limbs feel heavy, not from exertion, but from performance. This was a good session, they'll say. Balanced, harmonious. They'll say your spirit glows. They'll say the empire is stable. But all you feel is tired, because no one told you that being divine means never being human. They tell you it's all about balance, breath, movement, energy. But there is something they never taught in the manuals. Something you're not supposed to feel, not in the sacred bedchamber, not with a concubine, not with anyone. Longing. It starts small, not love. That would be absurd. You're an emperor, not a poet. You don't fall in love. You allocate affection like grain. You distribute it like rainfall. And yet, last week, a concubine looked at you. Really looked. Not with the usual mixture of trained demureness and survival instinct. Not with calculation, but with curiosity. Not lust, not fear. Just the kind of glance that makes you feel, for a second, like a person, not a symbol. You didn't remember her name, still don't, if you're honest. But you remember the moment. Her eyes didn't lower fast enough. She blinked once, slowly, as if thinking, as if trying to read you. And that's the danger. Emotion is not forbidden because it's messy. It's forbidden because it's subversive. A moment of human connection in the palace is like a loose thread in an embroidered robe. Pull it, and everything unravels. So you did the only thing you could. You avoided her name on the Upai roster. Quietly, indirectly. A subtle note to the eunuchs. Assign her to temple cleaning duty. Mark her as yin incompatible for this month. It's cruel, but necessary. Too many eyes are watching, and not all of them belong to the living. In this place, emotions are currency. A shared smile can become a rumor. A sigh can become an accusation. And desire, that's the most volatile of all. You remember a story your grandfather told, back when you were still a child pretending not to cry during your first ceremonial fasting. It was about a minor emperor during the late Tang dynasty who became infatuated with one of his concubines, a woman named Mei. He visited her often, too often. The palace noticed. They didn't accuse him. That would have been treason. They accused her, said she'd bewitched him, that her scent contained opium, that she performed unnatural arts. By the end of the month, she was found dead in her chamber. No signs of violence, just no poison in her tea. Just gone. Vanished like smoke from a scented lamp. They said she died of imbalance. You think about her sometimes, and about how easy it is to disappear here. The palace doesn't need gallows. It has rituals. Even the women know this. Perhaps especially the women. That's why intimacy in the Forbidden City is never simple. A kiss is a contract. A glance is a gamble. Every night, the women who come to you bring more than their bodies. They bring ambition, lineage, hope, and desperation. And you divine as you maybe bring risk. You could elevate them with a word, or doom them with silence. That kind of power wears thin over time. You begin to see it in their faces. Not in the younger ones, they're still rehearsing their lines, still pretending not to compete, but in the older ones, the ones who've played the game and lost, They don't hate you. They don't even envy you. They just endure you, politely, professionally, like an aging actor enduring yet another performance. You try not to meet their eyes. It's easier that way. Tonight, the eunuchs bring a woman you've never seen before. Or maybe you have. It's hard to tell. She's perfectly composed, powdered to perfection, her lips painted with cinnabar, her hair knotted with precision, and yet there's something else. Stillness, not the forced calm of obedience. Something quieter, like resignation or indifference. She doesn't flinch when you approach, doesn't tremble, doesn't even smile. She just lies there, eyes open, like she's waiting for a storm that's already passed. You begin the ritual. Breath, motion, control. The room smells like ginseng and silence. At one point, your hand brushes her cheek knot as part of the rhythm, but accidentally. She doesn't react, but something sharp blooms in your chest. Not pity, recognition. This woman, whoever she is, has let go of the outcome. She no longer plays the game. She's not hoping for pregnancy, promotion, or favour. She's just here to fulfill her part, like you. Two performers, repeating the same old lines, with no audience left to impress. You finish early, not out of indulgence, not from weakness, just from the weight of the act, the hollowness of it. You ring the bell yourself, a breach of protocol. The eunuchs enter, startled. You wave them off. They understand. She's escorted out without a word. You sit on the edge of the bed, robe open, hands cold, for the first time in weeks. You feel like speaking. To no one in particular. You want to say something like, tired. Or, do any of them dream but the room doesn't answer? It just listens. And so you lie back down, alone now, eyes on the carved dragon above you, and you let your mind drift just a little to that look, that glance from a nameless woman who forgot, for a moment, to lower her eyes. What would it be like? You wonder, if just once, someone touched you without thinking about their rank. What if someone laughed, really laughed? What if one of them forgot to be afraid? But those are dangerous thoughts. Thoughts that could get someone hurt. So you press your palms together, breathe deeply, swallow the words before they form, and prepare yourself. Tomorrow night, the ritual begins again. They told you, long ago, that the harem was like a garden, delicate, ordered, blooming with beauty and fragrance. But you've walked its corridors, you've breathed its air, and you know the truth. It's not a garden. It's a labyrinth. There are no straight paths, only loops, no doors that open freely, only those that open with conditions. And within it dwell women, hundreds, sometimes thousands, all alive, but not all living. They wait. That's what they do. They wait in silk rooms and lacquered halls. They wait beneath painted ceilings, on beds that haven't been touched in years. They wait for a name to be called, a glance to linger, a bell to chime. Most of them will die waiting. The harem has a structure, of course. Everything in this palace does. It's ranked, just like the court. At the top, the Empress, your official wife, chosen more for bloodline than affection. She doesn't wait. She watches. Below her imperial consorts, noble ladies, worthy concubines. Their titles sound romantic in translation, but they're administrative. Status disguised as elegance. Each rank comes with different quarters, different fabrics, different levels of visibility. Then come the lesser concubines, the ones with names no one remembers. Their quarters are smaller, their robes are plainer, their meals less elaborate. At the very bottom, the palace maids. Technically, they aren't part of the harem, but every year, a few are selected elevated to candidate status. They go through inspections, training, renaming. Some never make it past that stage. Others do, barely. That's how many of your concubines began. Scrubbing floors, folding linens, sweeping incense ash, until one day someone noticed them. A eunuch, a lady-in-waiting, a minor official with an eye for potential, and just like that, their lives changed, not because they were loved, but because they were noticed. There's a story whispered through the lesser halls, never aloud, never in daylight, about a concubine from the late Ming period. Her name was lost, but her story was not. She was never chosen, not once. For 27 years, she lived in the palace, ate from the same bowls, burned the same incense, practiced the same postures. Every night, she brushed her hair 12 times before bed, just in case, but the call never came. When she died, her room was found filled with dried petals and small folded notes. Prayers. They think. Hope she wrote to herself. Her name was never entered into the imperial register. Her existence was reduced to one line in a forgotten eunuch's journal. The concubine in Jade Wing 9 has passed. No further action. You think of her sometimes, because you know better than anyone that the harem is not about love. It's about hope, manufactured, sustained, weaponized. Every woman in the Forbidden City clings to the idea that one night could change everything, that a single visit might mean pregnancy, and that pregnancy, that's the currency of survival. A child is not just a child here. It's a ladder, a shield, a future. One son, and a girl can go from sleeping on straw to commanding her own wing. One son, and a maid can become mother of the crown prince, or even Empress Dowager someday. So they compete. Not with open claws, that's too obvious. They compete with posture, with perfume, with silence. They compete by knowing the astrological cycles, by pleasing the right eunuchs, by slipping notes through servant sleeves. Some flirt, some pray, some wait, all endure. And you play your role. The silent prize in their private wars. You think you're in control, but you're not. You're being studied, mirrored, manipulated. Every gesture you make ripples through the hierarchy like a dropped coin in still water. A lingering gaze can cause a fight 2 wings away. A smile can end a friendship. A second night with the same woman can trigger a miscarriage elsewhere, real or faked. And then there are the disappearances. Quiet, unspoken. A concubine who complains of headaches 1 week is gone the next. A servant reassigned. A curtain drawn permanently shut. It's always explained away. Illness, transfer, family emergency. You stopped asking a long time ago. Tonight, the woman brought to you is older than most. Her robe is embroidered subtly with images of bats and pomegranates, symbols of fertility and good fortune. You wonder if she chose it, or if someone else did. She enters quietly, doesn't speak, doesn't smile. You don't either. You wonder what rank she holds. If she was once higher, if she's being given one last chance before being retired, the quiet garden a euphemism for the harem's outer quarters, where women are sent when their time has passed but their bodies still live. She kneels. You nod. The ritual begins. There's no fire in it, no affection, just routine. 2 performers, fulfilling their parts in a ceremony older than memory. When it's done, she lies still, eyes open, staring at the canopy above you. You want to ask her something. Do you still hope but you don't? Because you know the answer. Even if she's given up hoping for herself, she's still hoping for someone. A sister, a niece, an unborn child. Hope, in the harem, is not optional. It's survival. And as she's escorted out, you sit alone, wondering not about desire or politics or legacy, but about waiting. How many women are still waiting tonight? And what would happen if you stopped making them wait? But you can't, because waiting is what keeps them from realizing the truth, that there's no reward, only rotation. There's a document for everything in the Forbidden City, how many steps you take from your chamber to the ancestral shrine, the temperature of your tea before it's served, the precise moment incense must be lit before a minister is allowed to speak. But the most detailed records, those belong to your sex life. They call it the intimacy ledger, though no one uses that term out loud. Officially, it's classified as a dynastic reproductive registry. Unofficially, it's the reason you no longer breathe easily after midnight, because every time you share a bed, someone is watching. Not from within the room, though you've long suspected that too, but from the margins, from behind scrolls, through incense screens, with brushes dipped in dry ink and hands that never tremble. They're not voyeurs, they're bureaucrats. Worse, they're historians. By dawn, your night is already being broken down into categories. Name of the woman, hour of entry, duration of activity, direction of your head, number of movements, estimated emission, emotional expression visible, muted or neutral. They file it beside last week's entries. They compare it against your pulse charts. They measure it against lunar alignment. dynastic charts, and past fertility statistics. It's not just surveillance, it's science, the ancient, unsmiling kind. You once made the mistake of asking why. A eunuch holder, half blind, but sharper than anyone in your court, answered you without blinking. Because your majesty essence is a national resource. You laughed. He didn't. And you realized then this wasn't a metaphor. Your body, your seed, your size and stiffness and silences are all recorded, quantified, and preserved for governance, for succession, for tax purposes. Because if a child is conceived, your child, it alters everything. It changes titles, inheritance laws, the political balance of entire provinces, the rice allowance for a woman's family back in Suzhou, even how many bolts of silk are ordered for the winter harem census. You're not a lover, you're a source of state data, and the act it's less a pleasure than a transaction, not just for you but for her, too. Every woman you touch is entered into the same system. If she menstruates afterward, it's noted. If she doesn't, she's sent to the physicians. If she becomes pregnant, her entire genealogy is reopened and re-evaluated by a committee you've never met. God forbid she miscarries. That gets noted in red ink. And if the baby dies, there's a code for that. And if it lives, there's a dossier opened before it can even breathe on its own. Education plans, marriage prospects, the preferred scent of incense for their future naming ceremony. You think you're choosing women. You're not. You're choosing bureaucratic chaos. There are days you lie in bed and think about saying no, about waving off the silver tray of your pie, refusing to pick a name, just once. Just to feel what it's like to have a body that belongs to you, but you never do. Because this isn't a palace, it's a company, and you're not a man. You're middle management. You report to heaven, the eunuchs report to records, and the only real boss is history. You remember once in your early years, you asked for a concubine twice in the same week. It felt innocent. She had smiled the night before, not forced, not seductive, just a real smile, the kind that came with a memory behind it. It made you curious. You wanted to know more about her family, about how she ended up here, so you requested her again. Within 48 hours, you were summoned by your chief physician, respectfully. He bowed, then told you your output rate had surpassed recommended thresholds. That overindulgence threatened not only your personal vitality, but the geomantic balance of the palace. That double visitation statistics correlated with a rise in flood risk in the southern provinces. He wasn't joking. The day after that, the astrologers arrived with charts. And after them, a delegation from the Ministry of Rights, offering alternative compatibilities to explore in future encounters. You were handed a scroll of suggestions, new pairings based on your current yang rhythm, regional representation quotas, and bloodline diversification objectives. You didn't ask again, because desire, here, doesn't scale, and the system does not forgive deviation. Some nights, after the concubine is gone and the sheets are changed by quiet hands, you lie awake and wonder what your log entry will look like. You imagine the scribe's handwriting 241, direction northeast. Concubine. 5th class lady, Mo, initial hesitation observed, completion presumed, or worse, 3, 18A. No measurable climax, suggest monitoring for cold key stagnation, recommend deer antler tonic, 3 doses. You once tried to read the ledger yourself. They brought you one page, just one and only from a year prior. You thought it might feel amusing, like reading an old diary. Instead, it chilled you. There was no warmth, no memory, just ink. You barely recognized the names. You didn't remember the faces. It was like reading about someone else's body, someone who moved like you, sighed like you, made choices you thought were your own but wasn't you at all. Just a figure in a grid, logged like rainfall. The eunuchs, of course, treat the ledger with reverence. Some of them have memorized entire sections. They can cite your most balanced month like a banker quoting returns. They discuss patterns in your nightly behavior, the way farmers discuss wind cycles. Once, at a private festival, one even offered congratulations. Your Majesty retention rate this quarter has improved markedly. You thanked him, then left early. Not because you were offended, but because you couldn't stop thinking about the word quarter, like you were a corporation, A body reduced to bar graphs. A night reduced to metrics. A legacy reduced to paper. Outside, the palace sleeps. Inside, another concubine is being prepared, oiled, powdered, wrapped in silk. You'll meet her soon. You'll follow the ritual. You'll breathe in time. And tomorrow morning your name will appear again in the intimacy ledger. Column C, row 43. The Emperor engaged the heavens with Lady Jew. No anomalies detected. Breathing rate stable. Final movement marked at 3 m. And history will nod and forget. She enters like a memory you haven't made yet. Tall, poised, a little too elegant for this hour. Her robe is pale gold, stitched with thread so fine it vanishes when she moves. She doesn't speak, she doesn't need to. Her silence is fluent. They say she's from the southern provinces, that her voice is trained in court song, that her breath smells like lotus seed and snow. But tonight, she doesn't sing, she waits. And you try not to stare too long, because staring in the Forbidden City is never private. Behind the curtain to your left, someone is listening, not breathing heavily, not leering, just recording, quietly, efficiently. A eunuch, armed with brush and board. His job isn't to interfere, it's to observe. Observe what everything. The moment she stepped into your chamber, the eunuchs began tracking. How long it took her to bow, whether she trembled, the angle of her gaze. There's a term for this behavioral compliance under divine proximity. It means she's being judged by protocol, not by you. And so are you. The room has been staged for perfection. The incense was chosen this morning to complement your current key cycle. The silk sheets are pale blue for emotional neutrality. The lanterns burn with sesame oil to minimize smoke. Even your body has been prepared. You've been massaged earlier with sandalwood and deer musk. Not for pleasure, for performance. The curtain rustles slightly. Someone adjusts the log scroll. You look back at her. She is breathtaking. Not in the grand, mythical way of poetry. Not the type that makes men start wars, but in the way a blade is beautiful just before it touches the skin. Sharp. Inevitable. She stands still, eyes cast downward, but her stillness is charged, like lightning before the strike. She's not pretending to be afraid. She knows fear isn't useful here. She's waiting for you to make the first move. You step forward. The floor creaks faintly beneath the soles of your slippers, a sound that will now be documented as movement initiation. She removes her robe with one hand. No fanfare, no flourish, just precision. You see the faint shimmer of powder on her skin, scentless, but costly. Her arms are marked with faint brush strokes, ritual calligraphy, drawn by her attendant before she arrived. Something about fertility, or harmony, or maybe just luck. You're meant to remove it with your hands. You begin. The first touch is gentle, rehearsed. The script says contact should begin with the back of the hand. Skin to skin, but not intimate. Not yet. There's a rhythm, a sequence. You follow it, not because you believe in it, but because everyone else does. As your hands move across her body, you can feel how carefully she controls her breath. Each inhalation spaced, each exhale designed to sound faint, submissive, receptive. This is not intimacy. This is choreography. You kiss her neck, and somewhere behind the screen, a brush pauses, not to intrude, just to timestamp. She doesn't kiss back. That would imply initiative. And initiative can be interpreted as ambition. Ambition, in the harem, is dangerous. It invites questions. Instead, she waits, and you go through the motion, slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. Each motion approved by ritual, your own body following a path that's been walked for centuries. And then something shifts. You meet her eyes, and for the briefest of seconds, everything else falls away. There's no curtain, no ledger, no incense, just the two of you, caught in the soft silence between breaths, and it almost feels like seduction. Real seduction. The kind where a woman leans in, not because she has to, but because she wants to. The kind where you're not a role, but a man. But then it happens. She glances toward the curtain. Just for a moment. Just the flick of an eye. She knows. She remembers. And so do you. This is not a moment. This is an entry. The spell breaks. You exhale. She reclines. The ritual continues. You move over her, around her, through the steps like a sacred dance. Each thrust matched to a breath, each breath to a verse from a Taoist manual last updated 3 dynasties ago. Behind the screen, the eunuch logs the progression. Duration, 13 minutes. Sound minimal. Pause at minute 7. No vocalization from concubine. Standard resolution. You try to pretend it doesn't matter, that the brushstrokes in the dark don't change anything, but you know they do. You know those notes will be reviewed, compared, discussed by the elder eunuchs, interpreted by court physicians. If tonight's log differs too much from previous entries, you may be prescribed tonics, or punished with rest. You've heard of emperors forbidden from sex for weeks after showing emotional irregularities. The phrase still makes you wince. You finish. You don't remember how. You lie beside her, though not close. That's not permitted. Your breath slows. Her eyes remain open, fixed on the ceiling. Neither of you speaks. After a while, she rises, folds her robe, bows once. The eunuchs reappear as if summoned by breath. She's escorted out, her hair damp, her calligraphy faintly smeared. You imagine the attendants preparing her exit report pulse stable, gait steady, uterus aligned, or whatever phrase they use. You're alone again, but not really, because outside the curtain, someone is still writing, and tomorrow morning, long after she's gone, her name will appear in a column beside yours. Night of 8th moon, Lady Yuan, initiated contact at 11:43. No disruption, just ink, on paper, forever. They say you're the son of heaven, that your will bends the earth, that your word reshapes law, that your face must never reveal confusion, desire, or grief, because to be emperor is to be above feeling. Beyond it, divine. But divinity, as you've come to learn, is an incredibly lonely place to stand. By title, you command 10,000 men. By ritual, you possess 3,000 women. But at night, when the corridors go still and the eunuchs slip into silence behind the silk screens, you're left with only one truth: you have no one, no friend, no equal, no witness, not even the woman beside you. She left before dawn, she always does, they all do, carried out like ceremonial offerings, bathed again, questioned again, sent back to the labyrinth. They return to their rooms with new perfumes, new anxieties, new rumours stitched into the folds of their robes. And you remain where they left you, alone. The morning sun filters through carved window screens, painting your bed in amber light. You don't move. You lie still, listening. Not for music, not for birds, but for breathing, for the sound of another human soul. But there's only hush. There's always hush. A servant enters quietly, sets down your tonic, bows, retreats. You don't speak. There's no point. He's not allowed to answer. You rise slowly, letting the silence stretch. Every robe you wear has been laid out by someone else. Every step of your day scripted by a hand you'll never see. By mid-morning, you're seated in court, surrounded by ministers who refer to you in the third person even as they stand 10 feet from your body. They speak to your title, not to yourself. They bow to your throne, not to your thoughts. You nod at proposals, sign edicts, dismiss disputes. Your words alter tax rates, redirect armies, destroy careers. But none of these words are truly yours. They're just echoes of what the system expects you to say. You are the mouth of a god, and the seers of no one. You begin to feel it behind your eyes, that hollowness that isn't quite sadness, not exactly anger, just absence. It follows you even when you're surrounded by noise, especially then. You remember, years ago, when a consort asked you a question that stunned you. Do you ever laugh, Your Majesty? You didn't answer. You couldn't, because you didn't remember. You could recite entire Confucian commentaries from memory. You could identify constellations by name. You could feel the shift in national sentiment by reading a single line of a provincial report. But you could not remember the last time you laughed, genuinely, spontaneously. It frightened you more than any rebellion ever had. Now, you don't get asked questions anymore. Not even from her, especially not from her. You trust no one here. Not the generals who bow too deeply, Not the ministers who praise your wisdom before contradicting it. Not the women who reach for you with trembling hands and carefully rehearsed smiles. Not even the astrologers, whose predictions depend more on your mood than on the moon. The only person you trust a eunuch, an old one, wrinkled like parchment, voice like bamboo scraping stone. He's been with you since you were 10. He helped you memorize the burial prayers. He showed you how to breathe before entering the Hall of Ancestors. He bandaged your hand when you broke a cup during your first royal outburst. As the only man who's ever seen you cry, once, just once, and he never mentioned it again. You trust him not because he's kind. He's not. He's sharp-tongued, humorless, and entirely too aware of your weaknesses. You trust him because he has nothing to gain, no bloodline to protect, no heirs to elevate, no ambitions to fulfill. He was carved out of the system, literally, physically, spiritually. He has no legacy but you, and that makes him the closest thing you have to a mirror. At night, when you sit alone by the inkstone, not reading, not writing, just sitting, sometimes brings tea without being asked. He doesn't speak. He knows you don't need words. He just sets it down, bows, and lingers long enough to be real. Everyone else is roleplay. Concubines touch you, but only to rise. Ministers flatter you, but only to survive. Even your children, those who bear your face, look at you like an oracle. Something to interpret, not someone to love. You once watched your son flinch when you reached to adjust his collar, not because he was afraid, but because he'd never been touched by you outside of ritual. You let your hand fall, said nothing. The imperial tutors praised his posture that day. You felt sick. You understand now why so many emperors go mad. It's not the weight of power, it's the absence of witness. It's the knowledge that you could die to night slip quietly in your sleep, breath slowing, heart folding in on itself, and no one would weep for you as a man. They'd mourn the title, the mandate, the function, the lineage, but not the person, because the person has been erased, not by enemies, not by time, but by design, by the palace, by the system, by the illusion that to rule is to rise above need, above touch, above intimacy. And so you sit there, night after night, bathed in candlelight that was lit by someone else, in a chamber cleaned by someone else, waiting for a woman chosen by someone else, trying not to feel the ache in your chest that has no name, because you have 3,000 women at your command, but not one belongs to you, not even yourself. They don't write it on your scrolls, but the eunuchs whisper it behind the screens. Don't finish too fast, or your majesty will finish forever. It's half a joke, but only half, because if you linger long enough in the palace archives or just listen to enough old men folding linens and murmuring through missing teeth, you'll start to notice a pattern. Emperors die, but not in battle, not by poison, not even by rebellion. They die in bed, and not peacefully either. They die mid-act, mid-breath, mid-moan, sprawled over brocade pillows with clenched fists and contorted faces, like they were fighting off ghosts, or worse, inviting them in. That's why no one laughs when the old physician comes to check your vitality rate. He doesn't ask how you feel. He weighs the heaviness under your eyes, measures the clarity of your semen, listens to your breath while you sleep, because pleasure in your world isn't just dangerous, it's terminal. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. There's Emperor Wu of Jinramore to have died during an all-night session with his favourite consort. Some say his heart gave out. Others say his essence drained so rapidly, his spirit couldn't catch up. The official court record described it delicately. His Majesty ascended peacefully into stillness while fulfilling the celestial union. Right, he died naked. Then there's Emperor Cheng of Han, obsessed with Taoist techniques, particularly those promising immortality through retention. One night, he reportedly tried to suppress climax for so long, his body spasmed violently and his lungs collapsed. He died with his mouth open and his eyes wide. They say he looked surprised, and why wouldn't he? He thought he was following the rules, holding back, practicing Fangjong Shubadram alchemy, the art of siphoning yin, storing it like wine, and circulating it back into the marrow. He was trying to live forever. Instead, he bled from the nose and didn't wake up. But the stories don't stop anyone, least of all you, because fear is a slow motivator. desire is instant. And for emperors, desire is ritualized, sanctioned, expected. If you go too long without intercourse, the court sends inquiries. Is the dragon unwell? Shall we burn stronger incense? Would your majesty prefer younger companions this quarter? One time, after a full month of abstaining, for no reason other than exhaustion, you were visited by 3 different Taoist priests. They brought you scrolls, charts, a wooden model of the male anatomy with arrows pointing in all directions, labelled with phrases like reverse flow of cosmic wind and yin, intake through due proximity. It wasn't erotic. It was terrifying. You resumed activities that night, but with a new kind of awareness that your body is being monitored, not just for pleasure, but for decay. You begin to notice how thin your wrists have become, how shallow your sleep, how your back aches more after each visit. The concubines don't notice, they've been trained not to, but the eunuchs do. They slip bone tonics into your tea, whisper about deer antler and sea cucumber. They bring tiger bone wine and powders ground from crushed pearls. None of it works, because it's not your bones that are breaking. It's your will. You feel it each time a woman bows, each time she disrobes without emotion, each time your body does what it's told and nothing more. You're not lustful anymore, you're obedient, and that's worse, because the less you desire, the more the palace desires for you. They prescribe sex now like medicine. Your pulse is slow. 3 sessions this week. Your qui is blocked. Avoid climax but increase proximity. Your tongue is pale. Increase yin exposure during early lunar phases. There is a room in the southern wing of the archives where they keep records of every imperial death. You've seen it. Once. A long corridor of scrolls stacked on rosewood racks, each labelled with the reign title and a single brushstroke next to the word end. Some are simple died during illness, died in winter, aged 54. Others are not. You remember one that stood out His Majesty passed after exertion. Eyes rolled upward, limbs stiffened, no witnesses, no witnesses. That's impossible. There are always witnesses, which means someone burned the page or buried the truth, because no dynasty wants to admit its ruler died in a moment of pleasure or worse, during a failure to perform it, and so the legend grows, that emperors are felled not by swords, but by silk, not by traitors, but by thighs, not by fate, but by their own longing. You start to see the fear in the eyes of the men who prepare you each night, not fear for your safety, but for your balance. If you climax too often, they say, your soul thins, your aura fades, your dreams sour. You once dreamed of drowning in perfume. You couldn't breathe. You woke up with blood in your mouth. The physician said it was from dry air, but you know better. The palace is full of ghosts. Women who died giving birth to sons no one acknowledged. Men who collapsed trying to preserve a dynasty with their genitals. You walk past them in the hallways etched into the tiles, the silk hangings, the air itself. Every time you lie with a woman now, you wonder, is this the night I become a legend? Is this the moment my name becomes a whisper? Will they say you died noble or just exhausted? You used to laugh at those fears. Now, you keep a small bell beside the bed, not for ritual, for help, just in case, because you no longer fear the enemy outside the walls. You fear the moment when your body stiffens in pleasure and forgets to come back. You've read the scrolls, not the edited ones for public teaching, but the real ones, the private manuals kept hidden behind sandalwood panels in the inner court archives. They don't have titles like Love and Harmony or The Art of Courtly Passion. No, these are older, stranger, scrolls with names like 9 breaths to anchor the soul and preserving the dragon's route through lunar delay. You open them with care, brushing dust from symbols so ancient they seem carved more by breath than ink. The diagrams are vague, anatomical, yes, but twisted. Arrows loop through the body in strange circuits. Arousal is a spiral. Ejaculation is defeat. At first, you laugh. Quietly. Alone. Then you stop laughing. Because the more you read, the more it makes a terrible kind of sense. These Taoist masters weren't preaching abstinence. They weren't denying sex. Quite the opposite, they saw it as sacred, but not in the way the poets do, with roses and longing. No, to them, it was geometry, breath control, alchemy. The bedroom was their laboratory, the body, their vessel, the goal, not pleasure, immortality. And you, son of heaven, are expected to study their ways. It starts with the basics. Retention. You're to avoid climax at all costs. Not forever, just for now. For as long as you can endure, for as long as your spirit can hold. The body, they say, produces gingescence like water, drawn from a deep spring. But each climax spills it, wastes it, weakens you. Like tipping over a cup meant to last a lifetime. One drop saved is one day earned. So you practice, not in secret, not alone, with a partner trained since childhood for this very purpose. She arrives on the second night of the 7th lunar month. Her name is Lady Jew. She has the face of a porcelain doll and the posture of a ritual dancer. Her voice is barely audible, like leaves moving under snow. She bows but doesn't smile. Smiles are too human for what's about to happen. This is not lovemaking, it is breath choreography. The eunuchs leave incense burning in 5 corners of the room, each stick representing a direction of energy flow. They scatter powdered deer antler across the threshold to ward off spirit loss through feet. A bowl of salt is placed near the bed to absorb stray yin. You are given a diagram. Yes, a diagram. Positions, breath timing, hand placements, pelvic angles drawn like battle maps. Lady Jew leads you through the beginning. She hums a quiet note to set your internal vibration. Then she touches your chest, 3 fingers below the collarbone, and begins counting backward. You inhale through the nose, hold, exhale through the mouth. Press the tongue to the roof of your mouth. The act begins not with touch, but with focus. Your eyes must not close. Your breath must not shake. Each movement must circulate the arousal, not heighten it. Because the goal is not to finish. The goal is to transform. They call it circulating the dragon. When the body begins to rise toward climax, you must pull it back, upward, into the spine, up through the crown of the head. Lady Jew guides you with her breath. She counts out the rhythm of thrust and stillness. She whispers instructions between movements. Don't breathe yet. Lock your perineum. Roll your eyes upward. Swallow the heat. It feels impossible, and then it works. You feel the rush not down, but up. Like swallowing lightning, your body shakes not from release, but from holding back the flood. The manuals say this will strengthen you, that each time you pull the energy inward, your bones absorb it, your marrow glows, your hair darkens, your life extends. You don't know if that's true, but you feel different, more alert, edges sharpened, less fog behind the eyes. You call for Lady Jew again the next night, then again, and again. She doesn't smile. She doesn't speak unless prompted. She arrives like a clock, departs like smoke. Always calm, always composed. You begin to rely on her not emotionally, but structurally. She's your compass in a ritual you never thought you'd take seriously. But then the fatigue sets in. Not the kind that pulls at the body, the kind that settles in the soul. Because holding back isn't just hard, it's exhausting. You wake each morning drenched in sweat. Your thighs ache. Your jaw cramps from clenching. Your eyes twitch involuntarily, like they're trying to release something your body refuses to. You dream strange dreams, of spirals, of climbing ladders that never reach the top, of women with no faces whispering swallow the fire. The eunuchs notice your fatigue. They bring stronger tonics, offer extended rest. The court physicians declare your pulse sluggish but stable. Your Taoist mentor tells you, gently, that you must not stop now, that you're on the threshold, that just a few more weeks of practice will open your 3rd gate. You ask what's behind the 3rd gate. He answers flight, sight, vision. You wonder if he means metaphorically, but then he shows you the drawing. A man, levitating above a lotus, semen spiraling like vapor around him, eyes glowing like a painted Buddha. You thank him and pretend to understand, but you're starting to suspect the truth, that none of this is about living longer. It's about giving your suffering a purpose, because if you bleed for pleasure, they call it decadence. But if you sweat in silence, chasing the illusion of control, they call it discipline. And so, each night, you lie back on the polished stone bed, Lady Jew beside you like a breathing statue. Your limbs arrange like an ancient glyph, and you try again, and again, and again, until the effort itself becomes the reward, until you forget what desire felt like, until the only sensation left is restraint. They promised you eternity, not in vague terms, not in prayers or poetry, but in powder, crushed pearls, distilled cinnabar, boiled tortoise shell. The ingredients varied depending on the dynasty, the alchemist, and the particular fear gripping the emperor's heart that decade. But the pitch was always the same. Drink this, and death will not find you. You knew better. You read the histories. You've seen the tombs. But still you sip. Because in this palace, fear doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives quietly, in the silence between footsteps, in the rustle of paper, in the faint crackle of joints that used to bend more easily, and most of all in the mirror. You're not old. Not yet. But you've begun to feel the first slips. Your hands ache in cold weather. Your temples pulse at night. Your dreams vivid now fragment before you wake. So when the alchemists come, robes heavy with soot and pride, you don't send them away. You let them speak. You let them open their lacquer boxes. You let them unroll diagrams inked with symbols no one has translated in 200 years. They explain, patiently, that the body is a furnace, that with proper fuel, the soul can be recast, that your Jing-your essence can be refined, condensed, immortalized. But it requires ingredients, rare ingredients, expensive ones, and you have no shortage of rare or expensive. So the preparations begin. They bring in mercury sealed in ceramic jars painted with dragons. They call it liquid silver, the blood of the earth, a substance so pure it burns away mortality. You ask them if it's poisonous. They laugh gently, like physicians humouring a child. Only to those who doubt. The irony doesn't escape you. You command armies. You sentence men with a flick of the brush. You decide the fates of families, provinces, even gods carved in jade. But when it comes to your own death, you behave like a beggar. You clutch scrolls promising miracles. You swallow poison disguised as gold, because the idea of disappearing terrifies you more than any rebellion ever could. They prepare the elixirs in the southern laboratory, far from the kitchens, fireproof tiles, silver bowls. No iron allowed interferes with the transformation. The main alchemist wears gloves lined with pig bladder and speaks only in verses. You take your first dose on the 7th night of the 11th month. A small goblet, warm to the touch, thick, bitter, metallic. You don't sleep that night. Your tongue feels numb. Your breath tastes like coins. You lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if your soul has begun to glow. The eunuchs say nothing, but you can tell they're watching, counting, measuring the angle of your shoulders, the speed of your steps. You overhear them one morning. His Majesty complexion has brightened. No, that's just the fever. You pretend not to hear, because for a while you want to believe, and not just in immortality, but in progress. That you're doing something, that you're not just lying back, night after night, losing your essence drop by drop, that you're building toward something, becoming something. It's better than feeling yourself dissolve. But the side effects start within a month. Your gums swell, your fingers tremble, your dreams become longer, darker, filled with teeth and tunnels and burning paper. The court physicians call it energetic turbulence. The alchemists call it the shedding. They say your mortal shell is weakening, which is good. It means you're nearing breakthrough. But you know what's really happening. You're poisoning yourself, just like the emperors before you. You remember Emperor Qin Shi Huang, first unifier of China, master of walls and terracotta, paranoid beyond comprehension. He drank mercury too, not a little, barrels of it. He believed it would fortify his bones and clarify his sight. He died foaming at the mouth, but not before he ordered fleets eastward, seeking the isles of the immortals, mythical lands where sages lived off dew and moonlight, untouched by time. None of those ships returned. Maybe they found paradise and didn't want to share. Maybe they sank beneath the weight of delusion. Either way, Qin Shi Huang died exactly like the rest of us, alone. The tomb he built is massive, filled with rivers of mercury, lined with fake constellations, guarded by 8,000 clay soldiers he thought would protect him in the afterlife. You've seen the records, the diagrams, You even own a copy of the original burial design. Sometimes you wonder if you're following the same path, except your tomb is not underground, it's your body, your rituals, your schedule, your repetitions. Each dose is a stone, each night of forced abstinence, a new wall. You're building your own necropolis out of breath and silence and fear, and still you drink, because the alternative is worse. You try to stop once, just for a week. You tell the alchemists you need to rebalance. They bow, leave quietly, but 3 days later, you have a nightmare. In it, your reflection speaks back. It tells you that you've already died, that the palace has just forgotten to announce it. You wake up sweating. You call for the elixir that night. You don't even flinch when it burns, because something in you is already burning, and it's better to call it progress. Better to call it the cost of transformation. Better than admitting it's just fear. From the outside, the Emperor's bedchamber is quiet. The lanterns glow softly. The air smells like orchids and sandalwood. The polished tiles reflect nothing but pale light and clean silence. But this isn't a sanctuary. It's a war room. The battles here aren't fought with swords or spears. They're fought with perfume, with timing, with a slight tilt of the eyes, a whisper in the wrong ear, a breath held 1 second too long, and the generals, they wear hairpins. You learned this slowly. Not as a boy, they never teach you the real games then, not even when you first took the throne. In those early years, you still believed in the neat hierarchy empress, consorts, concubines, titles that promised order. But order is only surface. Beneath the silk, the harem is chaos disguised as choreography. It begins with the simplest question, who gets to lie next to you on paper? It's regulated. The UPI system assigns names. Birth dates are checked against astrology. Ritual purity is reviewed by court physicians. Everything is logged, stamped, approved. But somehow always certain women rise. They appear more often, they stay longer. Their names are spoken softer in the hallways, their presence recorded in subtler ink. You don't remember choosing them, but they arrive like fate, and behind them, quietly but surely, you begin to feel the tremors, a maid reassigned, a eunuch dismissed, a younger concubine quietly relocated to less favourable quarters. You don't notice the pattern at first, but then, one night, the woman beside you young, fragrant, 2 calm smiles with something behind her eyes. Not flirtation, victory. That's when you realise she didn't just get here, she fought to get here. You turn your head toward the curtain, where a eunuch waits like a shadow, and you wonder how many people did she have to manipulate to end up in this bed tonight, because in the harem, sex is never just sex, it's currency. Every touch, every breath, every rumour of a whisper, it all reshapes the palace's balance of power. A single night of attention means more than an imperial decree, and with attention comes danger. If a woman spends 2 nights with you in 1 moon cycle, the others begin to whisper. If she spends 3, she becomes a target. 4. Someone starts adding herbs to her tea. It's always subtle. A delayed bath, a poorly timed comment, a servant who suddenly can't be found. Sometimes it's worse. There was one consort lady Wen, graceful, soft-spoken, barely older than a girl. She was favoured for 2 months. Then, a sudden illness. She collapsed in the Garden of Peonies. The physicians declared weak blood, but you saw her face. Her lips were purple. No one was punished. No investigation followed. Her name was removed from the UPI tray without ceremony. The night she died, the jasmine tree outside her room stopped blooming. You remember standing at the window, smelling nothing. That's how you learned. The harem isn't a place of luxury. It's a chessboard soaked in perfume and blood. And you're not the player, you're the prize. Tonight, another woman lies beside you. Her skin dusted with crushed rose petals. Her wrists smell faintly of neroli. She speaks little, but she knows when to move, when to exhale, when to press her hand gently against your chest and pretend it's affection. But you know she's listening. Listening for your rhythm, your patterns, your hesitation. 1 wrong breath, and shall know. Know that you favoured someone else last week. Know that you're distracted, weak, vulnerable. Because here, even breathing is political. A deep breath means contentment, a shallow one, anxiety, a pause, doubt, a sharp exhale after climax, disappointment. And they read you like books they've memorised. They train for it. from the age of 10. Some of them. While you were studying war strategy, they were studying facial expression, how to move the corner of the eye to feign delight, how to laugh without joy, how to lie in bed like a blessing and a threat at the same time. One night, years ago, a woman gasped too loudly during the act. You thought nothing of it until the next day, when 3 concubines accused her of witchcraft. She was stripped, exiled, forgotten. Her gasp had become evidence. Another time, a favourite of yours wept after you left. No one saw it, but someone smelled the salt on her pillow. The rumour spread she was unstable, grieving, perhaps even pregnant. She was sent for observation. You never saw her again. Now, when a concubine touches your hand too slowly, you tense. When she smiles too sweetly, you turn your face. When she says nothing at all, you fear her most, because silence in this place is never empty. It's calculation. Even the eunuchs play their parts. They carry messages. They open doors. They give subtle cues about who might be available, who might be recovering, who cried during her last bath. They whisper prayers to one woman while hiding scrolls for another. They are gatekeepers to the battlefield, and they play both sides. You once asked your oldest eunuch quietly, in confidence, what the women say about you when you're not around. He blinked once, then answered, "They don't talk about your majesty. They talk about the position. Your warmth is a weather report. They're just dressing for the storm." You never asked again. And now, each night, as you prepare to lie down beside a new face with old intentions, you remind yourself, this is not pleasure, this is policy. And the bed, it is a battleground where no one bleeds, but everyone loses something, especially you. You used to pity them. Men without manhood, voices like cracked bells, smooth between the legs, silent in the halls. You thought they were safe. You thought they were small. But then you grew up, and you realized something no textbook ever warned you about. They run everything. Not officially, of course. On paper, you are the son of heaven, the mandate incarnate, the alpha and the omega. But in practice, you don't move unless they allow it. You don't breathe without them watching. You don't know what's in your tea unless one of them decides you should. They are eunuchs, cut, but not powerless, castrated, but not quiet. They were dismembered young, usually by the desperate hands of fathers selling sons for favour. The lucky ones survived, the smarter ones thrived, and the best of them, they became kings in everything but name. The irony doesn't escape you. They lost the thing that defined most men and gained what most men only dream of access. To the women, to the secrets, to the emperor himself. They dress simply, speak softly, move like shadows between pillars, but they hear everything, and more importantly, they remember. When you were 10, it was a eunuch who taught you how to walk like a ruler heels down first, chin still. When you were 13, it was a eunuch who taught you how to swallow pain during the winter fasting ritual. When you cried behind the screen after your mother died, it was a eunuch who wiped your face not with sympathy, but with precision. "Too much redness in the cheeks," he said. "You'll be seen." He was right. They always are. And the older you get, the more you realize they know you better than anyone else ever will. Your concubines may kiss your skin, but eunuchs track your pulse. Your ministers may flatter your wisdom, but eunuchs measure your bowel movements. Your sons may inherit your blood, but eunuchs inherit your schedule. They manage your day like farmers manage weather-observing signs, adjusting rituals, planting favourable lies, and they do it well. Too well. Because now, you can't live without them. You once tried, after a minor scandal, two concubines fighting over a misplaced ewe, one of them bruised, the other miscarried. You ordered a reshuffling, a cleansing of ranks. You dismissed 5 senior eunuchs. 2 months later, everything collapsed. Meetings were missed. Concubines appeared without warning. A visiting minister from the south accidentally walked into your bath. The palace unravelled like bad stitching. You reinstated the eunuchs. You didn't even ask where they'd gone. They returned without a word, but you noticed. That night, your soup tasted different, better. Your blanket was warmed exactly to your preferred degree, and when you lay down, the oil lamp flickered just once enough to show the briefest smile on your old eunuch's lips. Not smug, not mocking, just inevitable. You've stopped fighting it. They control everything inside the inner palace: food, fragrance, footsteps. They decide which women see you, which scrolls reach you, which petitions are delayed long enough to be irrelevant. Some of them even write your speeches. You don't mind, because unlike your generals, they don't want glory, and unlike your concubines, they don't want sons, they want survival, and the only way to survive here is to be necessary. One of them, Gao Lishi, became so powerful during the Tang dynasty that ministers bowed to him before addressing the emperor. Another, Wei Zhongxian, once forged an edict declaring himself the second sage. He rewrote history while the emperor nodded. You sometimes wonder if one of your eunuchs will try the same, or already has. The strangest part, you respect them. Maybe more than you respect anyone else in the court, because they've built their kingdom in the one place you never could behind the curtain, outside of lineage, beyond ambition. They know things no man should, like which concubines fake fainting spells to gain pity, which astrologers accept bribes to predict favourable nights, which ministers have secret illegitimate children hidden in the countryside, and most terrifying of all, they know everything about you: your appetite, your illnesses, your fetishes, your moments of hesitation. They keep a log of how often you sleep, how often you wake, how many minutes it takes you to finish, whether you snore, whether you cry. They could destroy you with a single sentence, but they never do, because they don't need to. They already own you. He once asked one jokingly why eunuchs are so devoted. He smiled, bowed, then said, "Your Majesty, we have no other homes." That answer has haunted you ever since, because it wasn't loyalty, it was leverage. And late at night, when you sit by the brazier trying to remember which woman you were with the night before, you sometimes look toward the edge of the room, where one of them always stands, silent, half in shadow, and you wonder, does he pity me? Does he judge me? Does he believe in me more than I do myself? But you never ask, because you're not sure you want the answer, and because deep down, you already know. He knows your fears better than your sons. He knows your body better than your wife. He knows your soul better than you dare admit. And if one day he whispers into history that you were weak, the world will believe him, because he was always the one standing closest. They say the women float, not with wings or magic or whispered prayers, but through ritual, wrapped in silk, powdered from neck to ankle, and carried by eunuchs, 2 at the shoulders, 2 at the feet. No toes touching tile, no footprints on stone, because once her feet touch the floor, she's no longer pure. Once, you thought this was legend, a story servants told to entertain each other at night, until you saw it yourself. A girl maybe 16 wrapped like a sacred bundle, stiff with preparation, her arms folded over her chest, her face still, not tranquil, rehearsed. She didn't move, she didn't speak, she didn't blink. The eunuchs bore her past you like a scroll being delivered to a sacred shrine. She was yours that night. You didn't remember her name. She left before dawn, but you remember the way her head barely trembled as she passed the threshold, as if she knew what this was not a seduction, but a performance. The ritual always begins long before she arrives at your door. By late afternoon, the preparations begin. Her skin is scrubbed with rice water and white hibiscus, her nails painted with powdered coral, her breath rinsed with plum blossom tea. Then the examinations, first by the bath mistress, then by the eunuch supervisors, and finally by the palace physician, not for illness, but for signs, any mark, blemish, irregularity. No matter how small must be recorded. A scratch on the shoulder might indicate disorder, a swollen eye, a bad omen, a tense jaw, emotional instability, and worst of all, menstruation, a single spot of blood. And the entire session is cancelled, not for hygiene, for metaphysics. The emperor must never be exposed to red yin. It poisons the cosmic balance. She's checked, washed, powdered, perfumed, then rechecked. Her robe is steamed, her hair woven with quiet symbols knots known only to the harem matrons, said to bind her aura for the evening. She's no longer herself. Not for tonight. She's a vessel, and vessels must be delivered without walking. So the eunuchs return, lift her again, one on each end. Her legs are tucked neatly, her hands remain folded, her face turned slightly left, always left toward the heart side. Some say this keeps her soul aligned with the emperor's. Others say it simply looks better in the reports, Because yes, there are reports. Tonight's encounter will be logged. Not the intimacy, not the emotions, just the logistics. Time of entry. 23:41. Direction of approach. Northeast corridor. Body temperature. Warm scent. Pear blossom. Foot. Contact. None eye contact. Minimal. Voice usage. None. It reads like a shipment manifest. And in many ways, that's what it is. Cargo from the harem. On schedule. In condition. Delivered. They arrive in silence. Always. The eunuchs don't announce. They present. They lower her onto your bed as if placing incense before an altar. She lies there, breathing shallowly, not from fear, but because she's been trained to. Deep breathing looks emotional. Emotional looks manipulative. Manipulative gets noticed, and noticed gets punished. So she waits, still as stone. You dismiss the eunuchs with a wave, but they don't go far. One remains just outside the curtain, listening. Not for moans, not for gasps, not for pleasure, for rhythm. The eunuchs are trained in breath counting. They listen for irregularities, for signs of strain, of weakness, of misalignment. They take notes. His Majesty breathing paused at minute 9. Concubines breathing shallow throughout. No vocal anomalies, no irregular movement. It is not a romantic encounter. It's a data point. Afterward, she is not allowed to speak. She is not allowed to linger. A bell is rung. Not by you, by the eunuch outside. He decides when enough has been done. When the ritual is complete. 2 more eunuchs enter. She is lifted again, still silent, still folded. She will not walk back to her chamber. She will float. The robe she wore is burned. The bedding is collected, inspected, and sometimes tested just in case the gods left a mark. The girl is re-examined before she sleeps. Checked for bruises, checked for sweat, checked for pregnancy. Although it's too early to know, still it's logged. Possible conception likelihood 2%, no evidence of tampering. Body returned unaltered. You lie back on your bed, still warm from where she lay. You barely noticed her leave. You're used to that. You used to believe intimacy meant closeness. But now you know it means procedure. The first time you asked to keep a concubine beside you until morning, the eunuchs balked. They whispered among themselves, consulted the astrologers, then returned with an answer. No, Your Majesty. Dawnlight may disrupt seed harmonization. You didn't argue. You rarely do anymore. Because you've come to understand every breath you take in this palace is part of someone else's ritual. And the most intimate thing you own is your silence. The next night, the cycle begins again. A new name drawn from the chilled basin of Yupai. A new vessel prepared. A new procession down the lantern-lit hall. She will arrive the same way, powdered, bound, weightless. She will lie beside you like a ghost in waiting, and when she's gone, there will be no trace, except the record, and the silence that follows her out. The palace does not sleep. It drifts, somewhere between midnight and dawn, when even the candle flames grow hesitant. The walls begin to whisper, not voices, not footsteps, not rats. It's softer than that. It's memory. Memory wrapped in dreams. And in the Forbidden City, dreams are never dismissed. They are translated. You're told early, before you even understand how women become pregnant or why birds are afraid of thunder, that a dream is never just a dream. It's a message from ancestors, from the heavens, from the invisible court of spirits that surrounds your every breath. That's why you're required to report them. Every morning, a eunuch approaches you not with greetings, but with a question. Did Your Majesty dream if you say yes? He doesn't smile. He opens a scroll, prepares ink, waits. You describe what you saw, no matter how strange, how fragmented. A green river, a faceless boy, a frog hopping on a golden plate. He nods, he records, then he delivers the scroll to the dream office. Yes, there is such a place. Tucked deep in the western compound, past the Hall of Moonlight, past the chambers where failed concubines pray for redemption, sits a room with no windows and 7 doors. Inside, robed eunuchs hunch over bamboo slips, ancient symbols, and tea leaves half dried. Their job to interpret your sleep. Their verdicts influence everything. You once dreamed of frogs, 3 of them. sitting in your rice bowl, blinking slowly. The next morning, your meal was changed. No explanation. By mid-afternoon, you asked. The eunuch bowed. Frog signified dissonance in aquatic fortune. Your Majesty is advised to avoid fish. You didn't eat seafood for a month, not because you believed it, but because everyone else did. Ministers began quoting it in court memos. Out of respect for celestial warnings, the fishing tax will be delayed. The governor of Hangzhou requests permission to substitute fish levies with poultry. You never signed a single order. Your dream did. Another time, you dreamed of a white horse galloping through fire. The Dream Office met for 3 hours. They declared instability in the border provinces, a rogue general, fire sign, horse symbol, southeast direction. 2 days later, a messenger arrived. A rebellion had broken out in Yunnan. They burned the local archives, fled into the mountains. You promoted the dream interpreters that night. You had to, because they were right, or they had made themselves right, and that's the secret. The palace is not governed by law, it's governed by stories, and dreams are the most flexible story of all. The eunuchs know this. They don't just interpret dreams, they deliver them. They slip suggestions into the ears of concubines, whisper fragments while combing hair. Last night, Lady Zhao dreamed of plum trees blooming in snow. Lady Li said she saw your Majesty standing on clouds. These dreams reach you by breakfast. You don't know which are real and which are fabricated, and you've stopped caring, because their effect is the same. They move people. They shift alliances. They create pretexts. One winter, a concubine dreamed of blood in the bath. The next morning she was sent to the cold wing for purification. The day after, her cousin, an official in the Ministry of Rights, was demoted. 2 months later, he was dead, all from a dream. No accusation, no trial, just red water behind her eyelids. You begin to wonder if the eunuchs dream for you, if they take turns crafting symbols while you sleep, if, while you lie exhausted from sexless nights of Taoist ritual, they sit awake, deciding which animal will enter your head, which metaphor to feed into your breath, and perhaps they're right to... Because the more dreams you forget, the more they remember, and the more the palace bends to their vision. There is one eunuch, old Ming, who never speaks above a whisper. He keeps a wooden tablet with 5 lines carved across it, one for each element. Whenever a minister stumbles, a concubine weeps, or your tea tastes too bitter. He scratches one of the lines with a bone pin. You ask what it means. He replies, "The wind shifted in your sleep." You never question him again. Because days later, a noble woman falls ill. A border fort floods, a mirror cracks in the Empress's chamber. 3 unrelated things, but all now part of the dream. They tell you that long ago. A eunuch dreamed of peaches. He told the Emperor a son will be born. 3 weeks later, a child entered the world, healthy, screaming. They named him after the season, and when that boy became Emperor, the eunuch was buried in the imperial tomb honored, sanctified. His tongue dipped in gold, all because he dreamed of fruit. You wonder now what would happen if you stopped reporting your dreams, if you refused to play the game, if you said, "I dreamed of nothing." But even nothing is something. They would say it means loss, or hidden shame, or death. So you keep reporting. You invent details now, just to see what happens. You tell them of blackbirds flying backward, of a river that boiled, of a child who spoke in reverse. They nod solemnly. 1 week later, the Minister of Agriculture resigns. You laugh, quietly, alone, because it's all theatre, but it's also true. Because when enough people believe a dream, it becomes policy, and when enough policies pile up, it becomes fate, and so you sleep uneasily each night, unsure if your breath belongs to you or to the man writing at the foot of your bed. And when the morning comes, and the question is asked, "Did your Majesty dream?" you answer yes, even when you didn't, especially then. She doesn't knock. She doesn't announce her arrival. She doesn't need to. You know she's summoned you, not the other way around, because the tea already sits on the table when you enter, still steaming. Osmanthus. Sweet, but not friendly. You bow, even though you don't have to, even though technically she's below you in the hierarchy of heaven and earth. But hierarchy is a lie, at least in this room. She sits, perfectly still, framed by carved rosewood and silence. Her face painted pale, lips crimson, forehead powdered with pearl is unreadable. like porcelain lacquered over steel. Her eyes do not move. They don't need to. The Empress Dowager doesn't govern with volume. She governs with stillness, the kind of stillness that makes even generals bow deeper. Her fingers rest on a phoenix-shaped paperweight. It never moves, but your attention keeps drifting to it anyway. She waits exactly long enough to make you uncomfortable. Then she speaks. You've been favouring Lady May. No question. No accusation. Just a fact, stated with enough weight to tilt the palace on its axis. You pause too long, probably, and then answer as evenly as you can. She has a gentle presence. The Dowager's lips twitch. Almost a smile. Almost approval. Or maybe neither. She lifts the teacup, does not sip. She has a dangerous uncle. There it is, the pivot. You're not here to talk about Lady Mice presence. You're here to discuss factions, alliances, power. Behind the silk walls of the harem, affection is never about emotion. It's about lineage. And behind every concubine's scent lies a family crest, a regional interest, a calculated risk. Favor a woman, and you empower her bloodline. Spend too many nights with her, and you might just trigger a reshuffling of loyalties across the empire. And she knows this. She knows this better than anyone, because she did it once, long ago. She wasn't always seated on the throne behind the throne. She was once a concubine too, clever, quiet, persistent. Her beauty was not her weapon, it was her timing. She placed her family strategically, silenced her rivals methodically, and bore a son when the empire most needed a symbol of stability. Now, that son is dead, and you wear the crown. But she still holds the blade. She places the cup down gently. No sound, not even the clink of porcelain. Even her silence is trained. Your predecessor fell because he listened too much to the wrong whispers. You know who she means, your father. A man of poetry. A man who wrote love notes in his own hand. A man who fell in love with a concubine from the outer provinces. Refused to rotate partners. Ignored the advice of the Dream Office. And ultimately died after an episode during a moonlit festival. They say it was a heart attack. The Empress Dowager says otherwise. You remember the funeral. She did not cry. She didn't even blink. She simply adjusted the ceremonial drape over her shoulder, placed a small coin in your palm, and whispered, "Never let love decide." Now, years later, she watches you with the same expression. Not worried, not angry, just calculating. You glance at the curtains. They haven't moved, but you know the court scribes are waiting. They'll write down what you say here. They won't record her words, only yours, and she knows that too. She always knows the cost of a language. Lady May, you begin, slowly, has been courteous. Another half smile. Courtesy is often camouflage. The Empress Dowager rises. One motion, fluid, final. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't issue commands, and she doesn't need to. She leaves the room, trailing a scent of dried roses and old iron, and just like that, you are alone. But not really. Because she is still herein in the arrangements for tonight's selection, in the repositioning of the concubines, in the way the eunuchs whisper just a bit more carefully near the western wing. She leaves footprints in the places no man dares walk, and her glance. It still travels faster than any messenger bird. One look from her can unseat a consort, exile a noble house, or silence a rebellion before it starts. She is power reduced to gesture, and she prefers it that way. Once, long ago, you tried to assert independence. You named a concubine without prior approval. You cancelled a ritual visitation schedule. You rearranged the rotation on a whim. The next morning, 3 letters arrived from the Ministry of Rights, all referencing obscure regulations, all written in her handwriting. You reversed your decision by sundown, and since then, you've stopped trying to outmaneuver her, because you know what she truly controls access. Not just to you, but to narrative. She decides which women rise, and which disappear. She decides which rumours live, and which die behind a cough. She decides which of your words are remembered and which are buried under scented ash. And the terrifying part, she does it with grace. She never yells, never threatens, never bleeds. But everyone bows just a little deeper when she enters, you included. Because you know that if she ever turned her full attention toward your downfall, she wouldn't even have to raise her hand. She'd only need to look. She's beautiful. Not the kind of beauty painted in scrolls or praised in poems, but the kind that rearranges a room when she enters it. The kind of beauty that silences laughter mid-sentence. That makes seasoned eunuchs glance sideways. That makes the Empress Dowager lower her teacup without comment. Her name is Lady May, and she's lying beside you, again. She arrived earlier than expected tonight, her robe softer, her lips painted more delicately, her silence even more poised. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't complain. She doesn't try too hard. She doesn't need to, because she knows she's already winning. You didn't choose her tonight, but she appeared anyway. Her Yupai surfaced 3 nights in a row, despite the rotation schedule. The eunuch said it was coincidence, a cosmic match. The dream office had nothing to do with it. Of course they didn't. You watch her now, studying the curve of her neck, the way her fingers curl slightly inward, resting against her chest like a delicate guard. She breathes evenly, but you can feel the effort behind it. She's waiting to be touched, to be measured, to be remembered. But more than anything, she's waiting to be promoted. And you know, without needing to be told, that she's not alone. She brings her family with her, not in name, not in robe colour, but in presence. Every time her name is whispered in the palace corridors, someone far beyond these walls listens. Her uncle, a governor-general in the northeast, commanding 5 provinces. Known for his Cold War strategy and his willingness to starve villages to break a siege, he is not just powerful, he is patient. And Lady May, she is his opening move. You remember the warning. She has a dangerous uncle. The Empress Dowager's voice echoes in your mind, low and without emotion. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to, because she knows what you now know. Beauty in the palace is never isolated. It's attached, anchored, bought and bred. A beautiful woman is a weapon. Her favour is a chess piece. Her body is bait, and every night she lies next to you, she gains ground. Tonight, she's bolder. She brushes your shoulder lightly just once, as if by accident, but her breath slows the moment her fingers graze your skin. She's watching your reaction. Even without turning her head, you do not flinch, you do not respond, but you feel the tension sharpen in the air. Because this is no longer seduction, this is negotiation. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you imagine the conversation taking place far from here, inside a richly furnished study in the northeast, where her uncle is leaning over a map, surrounded by advisors. He doesn't speak of love. He doesn't care about beauty. He speaks in supply lines and tax cuts, in titles and timetables. If Lady May is elevated to noble consort within the year, if the Emperor continues visitation through the lunar cycle, if a child is conceived, each condition opens doors. A new position in the Ministry of Agriculture, a delay in audit reports, a more favourable grain quota. Because the palace is not a sanctuary, it is a stock exchange, and every night you share with Lady May increases her value. You open your eyes again. She's still there, pretending to sleep, but her lashes tremble slightly. She knows you're watching. She wants you to be. Not because she craves closeness, but because she needs you to choose her. Not just once, not just tonight, but permanently. Because once you do, everything changes. She gets her own quarters. She gets attendants. She gets a personal eunuch, handpicked. She gets immunity from rotation. And if she becomes pregnant, she becomes a dynasty. You wonder, briefly, what her uncle promised her. Power, legacy, protection. Or maybe just the right to walk freely without being forgotten. You've seen this before. A woman rises, the court adjusts, a cousin is promoted. A merchant gains access to the court. A district suddenly receives flood relief before petitioning. It all looks normal, but it isn't. It's design. You remember the case of Lady Wren. She was raised a consort after only 3 visits. Everyone thought it was charm, chemistry, until her brother arrived from Gansu. Suddenly, border negotiations that had stalled for years began to move again. Troops were redirected, forts restaffed, trade flowed. Lady Wren never spoke about it. She never needed to. She gave birth 6 months later. The child died, but the power remained. Lady May could be the same. She could give you an heir, or she could simply be the vessel through which other men steer your empire. Either way, The outcome is the same. You lose ground. The eunuchs, of course, are aware. They always are. They've already started altering her visitation schedule. More frequency, shorter gaps between nights. They offer justifications. Her pulse is calm. She dreams in harmony. She soothes your Majesty key. They've been instructed. You don't know if by her uncle, or by someone who owes her uncle something, but the shift is happening. You feel it in the servant's posture, in the court lady's glances, in the way Lady Mace's smile holds nothing warm anymore in the inevitability. She has learned the art of subtle conquest. She no longer competes. She waits. Like a knife on a silk pillow, you reach for the bell, not to dismiss her, not yet, just to mark the hour. She stirs, opens her eyes. Softly, she speaks. Do you find me restful, Your Majesty? It's not a question. It's a calculation. You meet her gaze, hold it longer than you should, then answer, evenly. You are consistent. She bows her head, demure, but behind her stillness, you feel it. Victory. Not hers, not yet, but her uncle's, her family's, the people behind the curtain, pulling ropes with fingers that smell like money and blood. You finish the night with formality. No affection, no touch beyond what's required. She departs the same way she arrived, poised, unshaken. The eunuchs close the door behind her, and you sit there in the aftermath, realizing it is her beauty you fear. It's her reach. Because tonight, a beautiful woman lay in your bed, but it was a family that touched you, and an army that smiled. It begins with a sigh, not from you, but from the clerk. He bows, unrolls the bamboo scroll, and reads your sex log for the quarter. Not out loud, of course. That would be indecent. But the information is reviewed by everyone who matters. Your consort schedule, your retention rate, your lunar alignment, the amount of contact, the time of climax, if any, whether it was expected, delayed, interrupted, or spiritually rerouted. And this is not for curiosity. This is for governance. Because in this empire, your most private moments shape the nation's most public affairs. Your bedroom is a ministry, and you are the minister. The scrolls go to the dream office. From there, to the Ministry of Rights. From there, they're copied carefully by eunuchs who specialize in sub-intimate transcription and dispatched to 5 other agencies' succession bureau, Astrological Agriculture Planning Office, Regional Tax Distribution Council, Imperial Fertility Observatory, Census of Noble Bloodlines and Lineage Intersections. No one finds this strange, because they've always done it this way, because your ancestors did, because emperors before you fathered not just children, but policies with their frequency of climax determining who inherited land. Yes, land. You climax too often with a woman from the southern wing. Her family receives a temple. You ignore a consort whose cousin runs rice shipments from the west. Her clan gets taxed. The rhythms of your body ripple outward through bureaucracy. You first noticed it during a grain meeting, a routine affair, quotas, weather conditions, crop cycles, until one official grey-bearded, soft-voiced bowed and said, "We have adjusted the wheat tariffs for the Northern Valley in accordance with your Majesty continued union with Lady Sun of the 5th rank." You blinked. Lady Sunshed visited twice that month, both times brief, quiet. You had almost forgotten her, but apparently the state had not. The tariff adjustment was due to her increased proximity, as recorded in the ledgers. Her family had submitted a petition for grain relief, and her recent intimacy gave it celestial justification. The official concluded, solemnly, when harmony is expressed through favoured vessels, bounty follows. You wanted to laugh, but no one else was laughing. So you learned. You learned that your body is not yours. Your bed is not yours. Your moments of weakness, desire, boredom, or curiosity, all of them govern the kingdom. Each time you delay climax, it is noted. Each time you fail to perform, it is flagged. Each time you lie still beside a woman without touching her, the astrologers recalculate rainfall, and behind all of it are the eunuchs. They're the ones who log it, interpret it, whisper it to the right ministers at the right moments. One of them, old Sheng, approached you once with a suggestion. You hadn't requested him. He simply appeared. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low. "The southeastern provinces have been suffering unrest. Might I suggest inviting Lady Xiao from the Eastern Quarter? Her family has land ties in the region, and a dream involving birds and blossoms was recently recorded. A union at this time might bring peace. He meant it sincerely. You didn't argue. That night, Lady Xiao arrived. You touched her hand once. Barely. The next morning, a revolt in the southeastern provinces quieted overnight. Coincidence, maybe. But the Dream Office issued a scroll confirming the union's favourable vibrational balance, and Lady Qiao's uncle was promoted to oversee coastal ports. The more you resisted, the more the system bent you back. There was a time you refused to take any concubine for a week. You needed rest, clarity, solitude. The eunuchs were polite, respectful. But after 3 days, the Empress Dowager paid a visit. She did not raise her voice. She simply placed a slip of paper on your writing table, a copy of the Imperial Lineage Stability Forecast. At the bottom, a note in elegant calligraphy. Stillness creates stagnation. The fields wither when the dragon sleeps. You summoned Lady in that night. She arrived in silence. The next morning, the tax on barley was lifted in her province. You've stopped asking for explanations, because everything has one, even when it shouldn't. One night, a concubine tripped entering your chamber. She caught herself, smiled. You thought nothing of it, but the act was logged as disrupted ceremonial entry. 2 days later, her family's mining contract was revoked. Bad omen, the Dream Office said. Balance interrupted. You almost apologized, but the scrolls had already been sealed. There's an entire annex in the Ministry of Finance labelled Lust-Based Distribution Archives. You've never been, but you've heard the rumours. Shelves filled with detailed analysis how increased proximity to women of the central region correlates with higher citrus yields, how abstinence from northern concubines results in cattle dying during droughts. There's a wall chart tracking which positions produce the most favourable omens. Yes, positions. The jade boat position is linked to wealth. The flying lantern posture predicts border peace, and one particular angular air, difficultest said to generate wind favourable for sea merchants. You've never attempted it. They assigned it once to an emperor who dislocated his hip in the process. He was mocked in poetry for a decade. Now, you lie beside another woman. She's barely moved. She knows tonight is not about her. It's about the charts, the season, the tea merchants of Hangzhou. She will leave quietly, but her presence will echo through ledgers, conversations, budgets. You will sign a decree tomorrow lowering taxes on coastal goods, not because of policy, but because she was scheduled. You used to believe in power as choice. Now you know its rhythm. You're a gear in a machine, and the oil is desire managed by mathematics. You wake in the mornings with stiff knees and aching temples, only to be told that last night's ritual brought balance to the irrigation patterns of the south. You smile, because what else can you do? Even your exhaustion has a function, and sometimes it works. Sometimes a storm passes early, a tax revolt fizzles, a child is born healthy, and everyone nods, satisfied. Because your body obeyed the calendar, your pleasure or lack of it was productive, and the scrolls reflect that. Black ink on ivory paper, history as foreplay, governance as afterglow, and you lie still, listening to the eunuch's soft footsteps beyond the curtain, waiting for them to record the final detail. Resolution complete, balance restored, empire steady, and all because you didn't finish too fast or too slow, but exactly on time. You're lying still again. The silk beneath your back has barely creased. The incense in the corners burns low 5 sticks, arranged according to the old diagram. Their smoke curl upward, slow and deliberate, as if mimicking breath. It's the 3rd night this week. Same woman, same position, same rhythm of breathing, same instructions whispered into your left ear by a eunuch before he vanishes behind the curtain. Inhale at the peak, hold, swallow the heat, exhale downward. Do not release, do not scatter the dragon. You nod. You always nod now, even when you don't understand. Because this is the final stage. That's what they call it. Not a final act, not a last pleasure, but a ritual. The culmination of months, years of practice. You have entered the final chamber of the Taoist art of dual cultivation without loss. In simpler words, sex without climax. Intercourse as circulation. Union as internal transformation. Every movement is meant to spiral energy upward, not out. The moment of peak pleasure must be stopped. flipped, reversed, drawn back into the spine, looped through the breath, and stored in the marrow. Stored. Because every drop you don't release, they say buys you one more day. You used to laugh at that. Not out loud, but internally, quietly, the way all rulers laugh at things they don't dare mock in public. Back then, you thought of life as something you conquered. Now, you think of it as something you postpone. And so, you lie here, thighs taut, jaw clenched, eyes half closed, not in ecstasy, but in calculation. Lady Jew lies beneath you, motionless except for her breath. Her eyes are closed, but she is not asleep. She is trained for this. She counts with you, guides you without words. Her skin is cool, her body relaxed. She has done this more than you. She is a partner, but she is not a lover. Lovers wait for release. Partners wait for balance. You can feel it building at that heat, that tremor, the wave rising up from the base of your spine. Your instinct is to let it go, but you can't. You hold it, clamp down on it. Your stomach tightens, your breath halts, your eyes roll upward, as instructed. Your teeth press against each other. You pull the energy back, not all of it, never all of it, but enough. Enough that the moment passes, and with it, the danger. You collapse not dramatically, not loudly, but with that weary kind of stillness that doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like endurance, like waiting. The physicians will be pleased. They will examine you tomorrow, measure your pulse, check your tongue, count the beats behind your ear. They'll say you've preserved your essence, that your qi is firm, that your yang is glowing. They'll write it in the record session complete. No emission, energy retained. They will nod. They will say your majesty has extended his life, and maybe they're right. But tonight, lying beside a woman you do not touch unless instructed, in a chamber whose silence grows heavier each time you survive it, you begin to wonder, what life are you preserving? Is it a body, a throne, a system, or just the idea that control, if practiced long enough, can cheat death? The first time you heard the theory, you were 16. A Taoist monk visited the palace with a scroll wrapped in deerskin. He was lean, old, barefoot, his hair tied with vine. He did not bow. He did not flatter. He looked you in the eye and said, "Death is not a moment. It is a leak, a drip, a drip, a drip until nothing remains." You laughed. You were a boy. He left, but the image stayed. And now, as you lie motionless, breathing carefully through your nose, your heart still loud in your ribs, you remember that image. A body as a vase. Each night, a drop escapes, until it is empty, unless you learn to stop the drip. And maybe you have. The eunuchs are quieter now. They no longer linger at the door with herbs. They no longer ask if you would prefer someone younger, someone more pliant, someone with a softer voice. They've stopped treating your sex life as spectacle. They treat it as maintenance, like oiling a hinge or stoking a flame. You still receive reports. The Dream Office declared your recent practices spiritually restorative. The Agriculture Ministry reported unusually stable rice output. Even the Ministry of War noted a 12% drop in border conflicts. One eunuch even remarked that your majesty restraint brings harmony to the north wind. You didn't bother asking what that meant. But you understood the tone, your abstinence, your control, your unfinished acts are now national infrastructure, and so you continue. Not because it pleases you, but because you are afraid to stop. There is a new scroll on your writing table tonight, left by the elder physician. He says if you can complete this ritual for 108 consecutive nights, without release, the Taoist masters believe you may open the gate of the ninth heaven. Inside this gate lies true vitality, clear vision, even immortality. You trace your fingers over the parchment. 108 nights. You're only on night 61. Your thighs ache. Your breath has grown shallow. You have not smiled in weeks. Your skin feels tighter. Your dreams are full of symbols, spirals, ascending staircases, frogs whispering from within jars. But your pulse is steady, and so the work continues. Lady Jew shifts beside you. She opens one eye, says nothing. She has served 10 emperors in her lifetime. You are her 11th. She will serve more. You wonder if she believes in the practice, or if she simply watches men age more slowly and calls it success. She speaks once. Finally, tonight was stronger. You nod. You don't thank her. She doesn't expect it. She folds her robe, bows, and exits. Feet silent, face blank. You lie there in the stillness, and for the first time in weeks you smile. A small smile. Not because you're happy, not because you believe the gate of the ninth heaven is real, but because you've made it another night. And sometimes that's enough. They will say you lived well. They'll write it in clean brushstrokes on silk banners, carve it in stone with delicate flourishes. 1,000 years from now, school children may memorize your reign name alongside harvest figures and temple renovations, and they will believe it. Because numbers are easy, they'll say you ruled 37 years, maintained peace on all borders, sired 24 children, rotated concubines with proper ritual discipline, achieved 9 cycles of Taoist retention, never overstepped the rhythm of the heavens. They will say the empire was stable, that you were wise, balanced, harmonious, but they will not say that you were lonely, or tired, or hollowed out by the shape of a life that never allowed room for laughter, because no one writes that down, no one dares, and perhaps no one noticed, except you, and maybe that one concubine who once asked softly, like a breath, "Do you ever laugh? Your Majesty." You didn't answer then, because you didn't remember, and now you're not sure you ever did. You've slept with more women than you can count, not in the way poets boast, but in the way scrolls record, names stacked, schedules logged, rhythms memorized. You've touched thousands of skin tones, whispered into thousands of ears, followed breathwork, posture charts, lunar harmonics perfectly. You've made love in silence, under watch, in service of harvests and tax reforms. And not once did anyone laugh. Not them, not you, because laughter breaks rhythm, and rhythm is sacred. But still, you wonder what would have happened if someone had broken it, if someone had reached out not to offer harmony, but to mess it up, to kiss you crookedly, to sneeze mid-ritual, to whisper something completely stupid at the worst moment and collapse into giggles beneath your robes. It sounds ridiculous now, but that's what life used to be. Didn't it ridiculous? Before everything became sacred, before you became history for sleep. That's what this has all been. Hasn't it not governance, not destiny, but a bedtime story written in reverse? You built a life so full of control, so precisely measured, that even your gasps were regulated. You became an emperor whose body was recorded like rainfall, a man whose climax or lack of it could shift grain quotas and border taxes, a man whose every intimate act was documented for astrology, tax policy, and regional inheritance calculations. A man who spent decades trying to live longer by doing less and less. You remember the scrolls. You remember the promise. Each drop retained adds one more day. So you held back for weeks, for months, for years. And maybe you did live longer, but you're not sure you lived better. In the quiet hours between incense and protocol, you began to ask yourself, what's the point of staying alive if you no longer feel alive? No one had an answer. Not the eunuchs, not the physicians, not the Taoist masters with their charts and maps of meridians. They just nodded, bowed, prescribed more silence, so you carried on. Like an eternal flame no one dared look at directly. You became more ritual than ruler, more ghost than god. You became predictable, and in the Forbidden City, predictability is the final stage of power. That's when the world starts preparing to live without you. There's a rumor in the outer chambers. They say you've gone invisible. Not literally, of course, but symbolically. You're no longer present during morning rites. Your voice is quoted more than heard. Your name is spoken, but your face remains behind the curtain. The eunuchs still log your breath, but even they've started referring to you in past tense. His pulse was calm today. His presence remained centered, as if you're already gone. As if you're part of the architecture, now another gilded carving, another painted screen, another layer of history for sleep. They will not say you were sad. They will say you were serene, because sadness is messy, and serenity is easier to bow to. But between the folds of your official silence, there was longing. Not for war, not for power, but for a hand that trembled, a voice that cracked, a night that didn't end with ink and statistics. You wanted someone to stay, to fall asleep beside you, not out of duty, but because they forgot to leave. You wanted a moment that didn't need to be interpreted, just lived, unrecorded, unaudited, uncontrolled. But that moment never came, because even your dreams were filtered through bureaucratic parchment and mapped onto rice taxes, because your palace was designed to protect your body from death but not your soul from silence. And so, the ritual continued, and continued, and continued, until one night it didn't. Your final night will not be remembered as final. No one will know exactly when it came, because you were lying still, as usual, breathing slowly, as prescribed, your hand resting on the silk pillow, eyes closed, not from exhaustion, but from custom. The concubine beside you thought you were meditating. The eunuch outside thought your stillness was harmony. The physician thought your silence was preservation. And by the time anyone realized otherwise, you were already fading. Not abruptly, not tragically, just gently, like smoke drifting away from a candle no one remembers lighting, like history exhaling, like the closing line of a story meant to soothe, not to shock. A perfect ending, they'll say, worthy of inscription, a moment of balance, of peace, of the kind of death that makes bureaucrats comfortable, the kind that sounds beautiful in the official archives of history for sleep. But you will not remember it. You will have forgotten everything that made you once tremble with life. The first time someone said your name with mischief in their voice, the first laugh you tried to stifle during a funeral, the time you looked into someone's eyes and saw not loyalty, not performance but recognition. You will have forgotten what it meant to be touched without purpose, to be kissed without strategy, to be broken, just a little, by love. And that is the real tragedy. Not that you died, but that you prepared so hard not to die, you forgot how to live. And so ends your reign. Your dynasty will continue. Your legacy will be polished. Your rituals will be mimicked for generations. Your name engraved onto plaques, invoked in prayers, cited in reports will become just another chapter in the ever-growing anthology of history for sleep. And somewhere, long after you are gone, a concubine will still powder her face before bed, hoping to be chosen. A eunuch will still dip his brush in ink, logging a night he didn't witness. A scholar will still teach that harmony begins in the breath, and a young emperor wide-eyed, still unbroken, will sit on your throne, wondering why no one dares to laugh anymore, and in that quiet, he will become like you, a perfect note in a song no one dares to interrupt, another ghost in silk, another smile without warmth, another god who forgot how to be human, another ending that no one will question, another chapter in the book they call history for sleep. If you've made it this far past the rituals, the records, the silk, and the silence, this is your reward. Because most stories end with the emperor's death. This one doesn't. This one keeps going, quietly, like the machine it was always meant to be. You thought the ritual ended when the woman left, when the bedding was changed, when the eunuchs bowed, when your breath returned to normal. But it didn't, because that moment where most men would turn over and sleep is exactly when the machine began moving, quietly, efficiently, without scent or voice, without pause. Somewhere behind the walls a second eunuch enters, not the one who carried her in, a different one, trained for silence, assigned to one task to collect what remains. He walks barefoot, hands gloved in silk, a shallow tray in one hand, a scroll tucked under the other. First, he checks the pillow, then the sheets, then the cup of tea you left unfinished on the side table. He takes a drop of your urine, smells it, closes his eyes, pauses, then nods. You won't remember this, but the reading will decide what you eat tomorrow, which woman is scheduled next week, whether your court astrologer sends word to the southern borders. They call this the back chamber cycle, the part of the ritual you're never supposed to notice. You are the show. This is the post-production. Your body once worshipped is now a specimen. The drop of sweat on your collarbone logged, the crease in your robe compared to past creases, your breath too warm, overexerted, too shallow, imbalanced, too even, possibly artificial. And if the eunuchs sense doubt, the dream office will be notified. They will assign a dream, one you'll be told you had, one that fits what the machine needs next. You think the palace is made of walls. It's not. It's made of patterns, breath, pressure, frequency, heat. Your sex life was just the front office. The real power was always in the back room, One woman once fainted before the ritual began. She hadn't even seen your face yet. The reason, not fear. She had been fasting for 3 days, not by choice, by instruction. Her pulse was made intentionally fragile, so that when she was examined afterward, the report would say contact achieved, energetic rebound positive, yin fully absorbed. It meant you performed well. Even if you didn't, even if you fell asleep halfway through, the system doesn't care about you. It cares about numbers, because the real task isn't to protect you. It's to protect the illusion of balance. And the people who maintain it, they are invisible. Men with no names, women who aren't allowed to speak, old servants who stir the herbs that numb your lower spine just enough to delay climax by 2 seconds. Because 2 seconds buys them another week without audit. A palace maid who breathes next to your food to seed your dreams with the scent of oranges, because the South is pushing for reduced grain levies. A scribe who writes in reverse under your lineage chart, so that the ink can't be read until next season. You never see them, but they all know you, every pore, every pattern, every unfinished breath. You thought you were avoiding death by holding it back, by mastering restraint, by swallowing desire and storing it in your bones. But you weren't. You were feeding the machine, one slow night at a time, one silent exhale at a time, until now, when the ritual is over and still the machine records. In a week, your body will be washed, the eunuchs will document your skin texture, measure the length of your hair, compare your last breath to your first recorded one. Your archive will be sealed, your seed, frozen on paper, and a new emperor will sit where you once lay. Hell be younger, curious, still asking questions you've long stopped asking, still believing that control is the secret to peace. Hell hold the same tray, the same tags. Hell breathe the same incense. And somewhere, in the chamber behind his own, someone will be listening. Again. So if you've made it this far into the story, thank you. This isn't just the ending. This is the part no one was supposed to see. The hidden hallway, the part they never wrote down, the final truth behind every dynasty, every knight, every emperor who lived long enough to forget how it felt to tremble. This is your reward for staying, for listening, for remembering what they erased. Because now you know the emperor didn't rule the machine. He was just its fuel. This isn't just the ending. This is the part no one was supposed to see. The hidden hallway, the part they never wrote down, the final truth behind every dynasty, every knight, every emperor who lived long enough to forget how it felt to tremble. This is your reward for staying, for listening, for remembering what they erased. You were told there would be something waiting for you at the end, and here it is. Not a twist, not a secret, just a silence most never reach. You stayed, you remembered, and this was your reward. They say he died quietly, that the emperor's breath faded like ink diluted in tea, that his final moment was harmonious, recorded without anomalies, sealed with red thread, tucked away in the imperial archive. I know otherwise, because I wrote it, twice. Once, the version they told me to copy, and once, the version I wasn't allowed to keep, the one where he reached for someone who wasn't there, the one where he whispered a name, but no one leaned close enough to catch it, the one where he blinked only once like someone remembering a joke long after it stopped being funny. That version burned, officially, but paper doesn't forget as easily as people do. I remember, because I was the last one to copy his breath. I was born nameless, as most of us were. We served not for recognition, but for continuity. My father trained me with broken brushes and rice paper so thin it tore if you breathed too hard. He told me ink is not to be written, it is to be obeyed. My job was never to question, only to copy the daily log, the dream scrolls, the breath reports, the seaman register. Some entries were short. Lady Fang, entry completed, no anomalies. Others spanned pages, especially if the emperor hesitated or wept or forgot his line. Those we trimmed, smoothed, erased where necessary, because perfection wasn't a goal, it was a requirement. But that night, the last one something felt unfinished. He didn't die like a man, he died like a story that had no ending, and we were told I'd one. So I did. They buried the emperor in a tomb lined with cedar and crushed mica, painted with dragons, guarded by eunuchs who never spoke again. But before they sealed it, the Dowager Empress asked for one final look at his face. She stared, for a long time, then whispered, "He looks empty." I was standing behind the screen, holding the record brush. She didn't know I was there, or maybe she did. Either way, I added it to the margin, then crossed it out, then pressed it in harder. She looks empty, too. They say the Forbidden City emptied after his death. Not physically, but spiritually. The laughter that was never real stopped trying to be. The incense grew thinner, the halls echoed longer, no one rushed anymore. Because the story had ended, or so they thought, but the records continued. Because the new emperor was not chosen by the heavens. He was chosen by a ledger, by lineage, by frequency, by dream pattern compatibility. I copied his first breath, and it sounded nothing like the old one. The old emperor's breath had rhythm, even when he was sad, even when he didn't know it. The new one, it fluttered, like a bird too weak to land, and that's when I knew the story wasn't over. It was repeating, but with blurrier ink. Some nights I dream I'm still copying, that the emperor's body is gone, but the brush keeps moving, that the scroll never ends, that each name appears twice, once as a woman, once as a number. I write Lady June, skin warm, no eye contact, slight tremor, possible rebellion, and below it, in ink I don't remember holding Lady June. Skin cold, no eye contact, no breath, removed from system, and still, the scroll grows. It wraps around the table, then the walls, then me, until I am buried in it, and the only sound I hear is him, whispering. Did any of them love me? And I don't know how to answer, because that line was never recorded. I don't know how long I've been here. No one says my name anymore. I think they forgot to assign me a new one when the dynasty changed. That happens sometimes. You're too low to be remembered, too quiet to be erased. So you drift between kitchens, corridors, storage halls. Not quite a ghost, not quite a woman. He looked at me once. I mean, really looked. Not with ritual, not with rotation, but with pause. It was during an autumn ceremony, one of the smaller ones, when the wind smells like crushed leaves and old promises. I was standing near the incense tray, holding a bowl of ash, trying not to sneeze, and he glanced just once with that flicker of awareness you don't expect from gods. I blinked, he blinked, and then the moment folded itself back into obedience. But I carried it, for years, long after my feet forgot where they'd walked. I wasn't chosen, not once, not in 37 years. The Upine never turned up my name, or maybe it did, and someone replaced it before I saw. It doesn't matter, because I still waited. I did what the others did, breathed lightly, ate sparingly, smiled when asked. I had one robe, 2 combs, a lotus petal I kept pressed in a folded silk. Sometimes I whispered to it, not prayers, not love poems, just reminders. You are still here. You have not become dust. You were seen. When he died, the palace didn't weep. It reorganized, like a flock of birds shifting direction. One moment there's a center, the next just wind. I was moved to the quiet garden. They say it's for those who served without incident. What they mean is those who never mattered enough to be blamed. The garden is mostly dry. The pond cracks in winter. The peach trees flower out of sync. No one visits, which means I can think. And when I think, I go back to the moment, the glance. Not because it meant anything, but because it might have. Do you understand that how heavy a might have becomes when it's the only thing you ever held? There was a girl once, Yun. I think. She used to whisper her own name at night, over and over, as if trying to keep it from slipping away. She was chosen once, returned quiet, then never spoken to again. A year later, she tried to climb the tower, not to jump, to look. She said she wanted to see if the sky in the Emperor's quarters looked different. They caught her by the 3rd step, labelled her cloud-infected, banished her to the linen cellar. I never saw her again. But I whisper her name now, to share the weight of remembering. They don't know him still here. The eunuchs stopped counting long ago, or maybe they know, and choose to let me fade slowly. Either way, this is what's left of me, an echo, of a look. That might have been real, as in the scrolls now, trimmed, perfected, glowing in brushstrokes. But that's not the man I saw. The man I saw blinked like he'd forgotten how. He sat like his bones didn't trust the floor. He once dropped a peach pit and didn't move for 3 minutes. That's the version no one kept. So I keep it, here, in this garden, in the soil. Sometimes. I press my fingers into the ground and whisper, "You lived. I saw it. Even if no one else remembers. I wasn't meant to find the box. It was sealed, unlabeled, buried behind a false panel in the Eastern Archive, a place where paper goes to die. The box smelled like old breath, inside a single ledger, wrapped in faded silk, and a note, not signed, just written in careful, shaky brushstrokes. This is the one we didn't burn. They said my father was perfect, that he preserved the harmony, that his restraint fed the weather, that the sun aligned itself with his abstinence. But this box told another story, a story of blank mornings, of misfiled names, of repeated visits that were never logged. The ledger didn't lie, but it didn't try to tell the truth, either. It just sat there, quiet, heavy in its silences. I stayed up all night reading, at first, out of curiosity, then, out of confusion, and finally out of grief. Not for the man, but for the emptiness he left behind. Entry after entry, session began. No eye contact, no climax. Second visit in same moon, unexplained. Her name erased. I thought I'd find secrets. Instead, I found patterns, like someone writing the same sentence for decades, hoping the meaning would change. They told me I resembled him, that my posture matched his, that I had his hands, but the man in these pages didn't feel like someone I could resemble. He didn't laugh. He didn't pause. He didn't reach. He followed, and I understood, suddenly, why he had so many sons but left no voice behind. Because he was never speaking. He was being spoken through. I showed the box to no one, not the ministers, not the empress, not the dream office. I read it. Then I hid it again. But it changed something. It made the walls echo differently. It made the incense smell like waiting. It made every whisper in court sound like a correction. And worst of all, it made me doubt my own name. Because if he was a fiction, what am I? There's a courtyard no one visits. Just outside the dream office. It has no roof. Only sky. I sit there sometimes, alone, with the box in my lap, reading, not to understand, but to remember that forgetting is a choice. They will write my reign soon. Begin the scrolls, count my breaths, monitor my nights. They will praise me for balance, for rhythm, for silence. But I know now that's not legacy. That's obedience. If you're hearing this, if this scroll somehow survived the fire, they will surely set when I am gone, then remember this. My father was not a god. He was a man who was never allowed to be one. He followed charts. He swallowed fear. He held back desire until even his reflection stopped recognizing him. And the palace, the great, silent, sacred palace, rewarded him with forgetting. So I write this now, not for fame, not for lineage, but so someone, someday, will know he once dreamed of laughing, but didn't, not because he couldn't, but because he was afraid it wouldn't be written down. If you've stayed with me this far through the silence, the whispers, the broken paper hearts of history, this is your reward, not the truth, just the crack in the wall where truth once breathed. Remember that space, and when the next scroll begins, the next emperor, the next ritual, the next name carved in cinnabar, ask yourself, did they laugh? Because if they didn't, they are already gone.